Welcome to the EQ Video Tip. I'm your host, Eric Forsetter. As always, welcome to another edition of the EQ Video Tip. Before we get started, let's jump into the goals of EQ Video Tip. What's on tap for today? We're going to use Bill Murphy Jr.'s words and phrases that everyone uses wrong, but you probably use correctly. But in case you don't, we're going to analyze and make sure that you understand what the correct expression should be. It may sound silly, but you've been in meetings before where someone uses the wrong term. For example, they'll say it's a mute point when it's actually a moot point. Make sure that you don't criticize that person right then. Maybe pull them aside later on and tell them about that. But let's make sure that we're using phrases the right way so that you sound intelligent and, of course, your colleagues do as well. Tip number one, and we're going to use two phrases at a time. Physical year and mute point. Both are incorrect. It's not a physical year. Yes, there actually is a physical year and there's an element of physics to it, but it's actually the fiscal year that people refer to when talking to budgets or different accounting principles. The second one, a mute point. Well, it's not actually a mute point, it's a moot point because you're not trying to mute local energy, but actually the point that you're saying is moot, meaning it's obsolete. Remember, fiscal year and moot point as opposed to physical year and mute point. Tip number two, for all intensive purposes and I could care less. Now, let's think about this. For all intensive purposes, that one may make linguistic sense, and if you say it quickly, people may not catch that you did it the wrong way, but the normal phrase is really for all intents and purposes. I could care less. Well, yeah, you might be true to yourself in saying that you could care less, but if you in fact mean that you do care, you're not articulating concern by using that actual phrase. In fact, you're saying that I could care less, meaning I don't really care about this. So try to use something else. Tip number three, regardless and reoccurring. Typically when people say irregardless, they're actually trying to say regardless, and that's the real meaning they're looking for. Reoccurring. People often refer to reoccurring as opposed to recurring. Reoccurring is something that happens again and again, not necessarily on a schedule. Recurring means something that happens repeatedly, something more often like a schedule, like a recurring payment or a recurring meeting that happens every Monday at 3 o'clock. Think about reoccurring and irregardless as ones you may want to remove from your vocabulary. Our next tip, I love this one. They did a complete 360. Well, if you do a 360, which I'll do right now, I end up back in the same location. In fact, they didn't do a 360, they did a 180, meaning they turned around and faced the other way. So when someone says, hey, they did a 360, they just ended up in the same place. In fact, you want them to go in the opposite direction, which is a 180. Our last ones, and here are a few other ones that people just throw out sometimes, and they sometimes will just blurt it into a sentence very quickly. It's hard to catch, like P&L, P-N-L. It's actually P and L, which is profit and loss. Or, as an example, someone might say, they're a prima donna, thinking like the singer pre and then Madonna. It's actually prima donna, P-R-I-M-A-D-O-N-N-A. Little things like that, they make a difference, and remember to take your time and understand the meaning of the word before you actually go say it. That's a wrap for this week's EQ video tip. Hopefully these tips will help you become the best leader on your team, as well as encourage leaders to join your organization and grow as well. Take these tips, make them yours, and hopefully use them to become the best leader out there. So that concludes our EQ video tip for today. Try incorporating some of these tips into your daily routine. But remember,
Use what works best for you and personalize it for yourself. Thank you always to our great research team for providing us with some great tips today. As always on EQ Video Tip, we want to end with gratitude. So thank you for watching. We really appreciate it. Here are some resources that you can use if you want more information on EQ going forward. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Thank you.